Hello and welcome to Music Rewind, a podcast where we look to tell the stories behind our favorite albums. I'm your host, Steve Epley, and in each episode, we invite a guest on to tell us about their favorite music album, how they discovered it, and what makes it special to them. Joining me today is singer-songwriter Conner Cherland, a musician out of California. Conner has written over 300 songs, released 6 EPs, and has his first full-length album, Lake, coming out soon, possibly out when this episode airs. Welcome, Conner, and thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
Yeah, appreciate you joining. And again, thank you for the flexibility. We had to postpone this a couple times, but definitely gave me more time to dive into this particular album, which I really enjoyed. So let's jump right into this. What album did you bring to the table, and what makes it special to you?
Yeah, the Gaslight Anthem, 59 Sound. You also mentioned that your wife really digs this album, right?
She does. She came into my office several times when I had this playing and nodded with approval, and she wanted me to thank you for finally getting me to listen to the Gaslight Anthem.
Yeah,
she would walk in, and no matter what song was on, she'd know the words. She knew it front to back.
It's so good. The way I describe this album to people is it's not, I don't think it's the best songs in the universe on it. I think it's just like when it comes down to like who has the best album, I'm like, if you want to pick one that's like very specific to me, like this is the one that I like really listen to and has like really formed not only like how I want to songwrite, just like how I engage with nostalgia in a more positive way. I have my Linkin Park era where you're just like going back and it's like, it's nostalgic, but it's also like hyper emotional and like kind of painful, you know?
Right.
And then you have like your like stupid love songs, kind of nostalgic, but this is like, so I first heard this album because I had this roommate in college back at UC Santa Barbara. His name's Dean, and he would put this on, and then we would just play Super Smash Brothers for like the duration of the album. And like, it took me like 3 listens through to the album being like, wait, what is this? This is my favorite thing ever. And it like, so it had already like sunk in like 3 times through. But like this kind of album is like a spiritual touchstone for me where I like, you just continue to go back to it because you're like, how do you, like the song, the actual title track has just like the most perfect song structure. Like, honestly, it feels like that should have been the intro to the album just because it like, it has the big like guitar feedback sounds at the beginning, like it's starting the album. If I ever do get to meet Brian, the lead singer, that will be my question. But the first verse says, well, I wonder which song they're going to play when we go. I hope it's something quiet and minor and peaceful and slow. As we float out into the ether, into the everlasting arms, I hope we don't hear Marley's chains we forged in life, because the chains I've been hearing now for most of my life.
There's a lot to unpack in that particular statement. Yeah.
That feels so personal for me because it's like, I think so many people relate to this, which is like, ideally you want your funeral to play the songs that you like. Right? It'd be, because a lot of the times at funerals, they're playing, like, I went to one recently and it was like church music, which is like fine, but it was like kind of like praise church music, and it's not necessarily the vibe. And I think about like the songs that I really enjoy now and the songs that I would want to be played when I'm gone, and being like, yeah, I would want it to be quiet and minor and peaceful and slow. I also just like love the Dickens thing here because it's like, when I was a kid, I watched you mentioned the Muppets earlier, like I watched the Muppets Christmas Carol growing up.
Absolutely.
Yeah, with the Marley and
Marley.
Woo! And that, like, when you're a kid, that hit me so, like, it's so scary. That scene is so scary. And it's meant to be scary,
absolutely.
Especially to children. And being like, yeah, that was just such a big part of my childhood of thinking about how stinginess and, like, self-servingness, like, forges these chains on you that like follow you into the afterlife, and that can just be put on you as soon as you like get into the afterlife. I'm like, oh, oh no.
It's nice that classic reference is still alive today in this music. I caught that right away. That was a really visual reference.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks to the Muppets, and also thanks to there's Will Ferrell and Ryan Reynolds just did a take.
Oh, did they?
It came out like last year. It was also pretty good, and they have a good Marley scene. It's a lot less scary, so that's a little less good. But yeah, I just think it's really hard to balance talking about death in songs with just having a banger song and having it actually be able to touch on and make you float around the topic of death. My read of this scenario is someone who is the same age as Brian Fallon, someone who is the same age as him dies, and him singing this song to that person.
Apparently, it was a fellow member of the New Jersey music scene named Zach Finch who died in a car accident in 2007. Wow. And event influenced several songs on this album because death and reflection is a recurring theme through many of these songs. Decisions, what happens after, did you live a good life, will you be remembered? All of those things happen in Cars. A lot of references to Cars.
A lot of references to Cars. And radios.
It was great how they did mesh all that together in a very beautifully flowing album. Yeah. Because similar to you, when I listened to it, you mentioned you're playing video games and just it was in the background and then it kind of hit you. And it was kind of the same for me. I had it playing several times and, I was digging the music sonically. Yeah. I was like, this is good. This is like if The Killers, Jim Blossoms, and Bruce Springsteen had a baby. This is pretty good. I like it. Yeah. Should have listened to it a long time ago. And then, as I do with a lot of these albums, I just repeat listens and then I start zeroing in on these lyrics and what the narrator's trying to say. And it's very poetic and very honest. Authentic. Yeah. That's the word I'm looking for. You could tell that this is authentic from the guy's soul. It really is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very interesting how, there's really good lyrics on its own, but I think this album also taught me at a younger age, how important it is to reference things that are already in the public consciousness. Because when you reference those things, you have an alleyway directly into whatever that means for that person. So there's just so many literary references where you're Great Expectations, you have a sense, you're
Dickens right off the bat.
Yeah. So just the importance of touching nostalgia as a tool to get to people's hearts so that you can actually speak to their hearts a little bit easier.
Well, there's also a million musical references throughout the whole thing from Springsteen to Tom Petty to Bob Seger and Elvis and Counting Crows, obviously Miles Davis.
Yeah.
Otis Redding and Tom Waits. There's a million of them in there, and it's great how he weaves that in there, and it's almost like a love letter to the music that he grew up with that shaped him.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just on a Bruce Springsteen centered podcast, and we got to talk about the Gaslight Anthem as well, because they're because this guy is really pulling from a lot of Bruce Springsteen.
Lots of Springsteen, but apparently they opened for him for some festivals and Springsteen joined him on stage. Yeah, I don't remember which tracks, but there was some stage sharing there, which is pretty cool of Bruce.
Yeah, that's the dream. When you were listening through to it, what was your first song that you were oh, I really want to keep listening to this one or dig into this one more?
Oh, Film Noir.
Broken bones, Matilda left a note in the road saying, baby, honey, child, I love you so long, but you deserve much better than me. So I'm just burning all around on the miles in the road, and I'm never going back, and I'm never going.
Film Noir, interesting.
Yeah.
Why?
Let me scroll down to my notes on that one. Let's see. It's a bit of a breather. It's track 5, and track 5 is almost always a turning point on an album. Tracks 5 and 6 usually are, which has been I'm not saying always, I'm just saying of all the albums we've done on this show, that's always been the pattern. And the albums that are brought to this show are the cream of the crop. No one's bringing duds to this show. They're all great albums. Right. And track 5 is just kind of a turning point. And this one is the pace stalls for a second, and it has a different sort of intro, and then it builds back up but I liked the lyrics of it. I liked the concept. And I have a note here, a great line, but nobody never going to tell you the way. You got to figure it out, boys, and suffer the rain.
Yeah.
I liked that line a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like actually we can start at the beginning of the tracks and see how, because one of my questions is, how do you listen to it? Do you go all the way through or do you skip around?
Oh, I listened to this album all the way through, just like start to finish, then I'll listen to it again. But this is very frequently. I live in Los Angeles, but I do a lot of work in Santa Barbara because I moved to Los Angeles in the last like year and a half. So I very frequently have this like, it's either an hour and a half drive or it's like a 3-hour drive from here to Santa Barbara. So like this album on, and there are like a couple others that I'll bounce around with, but this one I'll just listen to all the way through. What's really like a cool, because it's very interesting for me to hear what sticks out to you, like which lines stick out to you, because I come out everything from like a songwriter's perspective and being like, wow, that's fascinating that category of thing hit my heart so well. So the phrase at the beginning, I'm all washed out by the side of the road. I think that's a good phrase. It's like decently poetic. And then it says, broken bones, Matilda left a note in a rose saying, baby, honey, child. Like that line is insane to me. Broken bones, Matilda left a note and a rose saying, baby, honey, child. That like, one, he's giving a nickname to a person. Like Matilda is now called Broken Bones Matilda. It's an amazing nickname for someone. It's like there's a giant story inside of that nickname.
Yeah.
And it creates a past. Like within 2 words, all of a sudden you have this backstory on a character. And then left a note in a rose, which is like decent, vague. It's like it's good and it matches the vibe perfectly. And then saying baby, honey, child. Baby, honey, child right next to each other. They all like, there's a reason why so many songs say baby all the time. It's because like it's reassuring to us to like hear it, and like, and then when we hear honey and when we hear child, like, ooh, child, things are gonna get easier. Like,
yeah,
they do feel reassuring, and to have them said one after another, it feels so good. We're like, oh baby, honey, child. You're like, oh yeah.
It felt like begging to me. I mean, when you use those terms of endearment all at once.
Yeah.
It's a begging sort of nature. Please listen to me.
Yeah.
Baby, honey, child.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember where there's another really good, it might have been in.
At each episode I do, I have 3 to 4 takeaway tracks that I put in a large playlist. Music Rewind Selects. It's on Spotify. And my 3 takeaway tracks were High Lonesome, track 4.
Nice.
Film Noir, and Here's Looking at You, Kid.
Oh, yeah. Gosh.
Miles Davis and the Cool was borderline, but Here's Looking at You, Kid, I just kind of enjoyed that song.
That's fascinating. It's very interesting which of these songs are coming after you. Because it sounds like you'll like Brian Fallon as a solo artist possibly more than in the Gaslight Anthem. Because my wife, she was like, when she first listened to this album, she was like, yeah, I really like, because she loved Here's Looking at You, Kid. And a lot of that is because his voice is like so tender and he really good at emoting in his lower register. Yeah. But in a lot of the other songs, he just kind of stays at this like top level where he's singing really high the whole time. And I can sense that is not everybody's vibe, but I'm like all about it. But yeah, I would say that like if anybody's looking to get into Brian Fallon, Gaslight Anthem, like Here's Looking at You, Kid is just a heartbreak of a song.
You can tell Gail if she calls that I'm famous now for all of these rock and roll songs. And even if that's a lie, she should have given me a try.
Not only the lyrics, but I was playing the little melody part where it's like, what is that? What is it? As it goes. And then that's like you're like in between every little like verse and chorus, and it's just so pretty and it's so simple. It blows my mind how simple this song is. But
for me, number one, I love the story around it, and I don't know the true stories. I mean, obviously he's talking to girls from his past,
yeah,
as far as, did Gail ever call, that sort of thing. And he's writing it as if he's a big rock star, but he wrote it before he was a big rock star. And
right.
I love that aspect of it, because he says in there, this is a deceit.
Yeah, even if that's a lie.
Yeah. And that goes back to the authentic honesty. And in one of the themes of reflection, he's thinking back on it. But then also musically, I love the way this is a slower song, and it really goes well into the end. Yeah, the backseat. I know we're jumping around the album, but that's fine. But it really cuts into a great album ending banger.
Yeah, I mean, the backseat is also insane. Okay, so sticking with Here's Looking at You, Kid, for a second. The line you said, like, that's total deceit. The next line is, but she should have married me. And I think it's such a beautiful way, because I think another huge thing to take away from this album is, like, certain phrases could sound really trite depending on how you said it. And the way that he delivers, but she should have married me, it's like really gentle and tender. And like, I think that this song, like, and that line has an analog to it in every stanza. So like, he's talking about Gail in the first verse, and he says, and even if that's a lie, she should have given me a try. In the second one, he's talking to Janie, and he says, that's total deceit, but she should have married me.
I remember there's one, he said that, if you had chosen me, I would have sang your name through the halls of the high school or something.
Oh, yeah.
And through the Hollywood stars and stuff like that. There's a song out there by Toby Keith, How Do You Like Me Now? And it's in the same vein, but it's completely different, because at that point he already was a star, I think.
Oh, really?
Or, in the country music sphere. That one was gloating.
Yeah.
This one is reflection. I enjoy this one. I mean, the other song's fine, but I like this one so much better, because it's him really kind of, just, he's not pining for these girls. He's just reflecting back on things that happen.
Yeah, I think it's super relatable in the sense that I think everyone sees themselves as special in like some particular way. And we've all had people look at us and consider us not special based off of reasons X, Y, and Z.
Exactly.
And so, like, he's really leaning into this idea of, like, all these girls, like, couldn't see that, like, he was actually really brilliant. And, like, I love that he uses, like, varying degrees of how much commitment they should have given him. Like, she should have at least given me a try, like, is a really small level of commitment, but it's really beautifully said. And then should have married me is a different one. But the delivery of some of these lines where he says, and tell her I spent every night of my youth on the floor, bleeding out from all these wounds. Okay, now I remembered my first, back to the nicknames thing. Great Expectations lyrics. He has another really great title in Great Expectations about girl with blood. And here we go. And they burned up the diner where I always used to find her, licking young boy's blood from her claws. And I learned about the blues from this kitten I knew. Her hair was raven and her heart was like a tomb. My heart is like a wound.
And they burned up the diner where I always used to find her, licking young boy's blood from her claws. And I learned about the blues from this kitten I knew. Her hair was raven and her heart was like a tomb.
That line, with like the way these phrases are like speaking to each other, of like, here's looking at you, kid, saying like bleeding out from all these wounds, and then like that's such it, like you could consider it a callback to that first song where he's like, he's talking about this girl that he met who is licking young boy's blood from her claws. That's like it's such a crazy poetic line to have.
Poetic is the best way I can describe that one.
Yeah, and then like her hair was raven and her heart was like a tomb. It's just like it just gives you so much room to wonder. And I think that really something that lets this album shine so much is like you can guess, but you can't know the exact thing that he's pointing to. and that space that you're allowed to wonder allows you to put yourself in it.
And I was going to say, very relatable. You know, everyone has had experiences like almost every single reference he has in these.
Yeah. You said your favorites were, was it Meet Me by the River's Edge was the third?
No, it was High Lonesome.
High and Lonesome.
Track 4, High Lonesome.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this one was also very poetic. So gravity came and stole the temple that the boys praised. You're getting drinks from the same boys who once bought you everything, and the powder on the bar was just this one time. It paints a very clear picture of, again, the girl from high school who was the thing, but now she's the one serving drinks at the bar back home, and that cocaine on the bar was just that one time. But it wasn't just that one time. I mean, it's sad, but that's, I say, most people know people like that. Because it's relatable. Yeah. You can probably picture one.
It's also crazy how cool of a line the phrase, I always kind of sort of wished I looked like Elvis. It's cool because, I mean, it has a sister line, which is, I always kind of sort of wished I was someone else.
Well, I took that as a Counting Crows reference.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, from Round Here.
Please tell me.
The song Round Here, Maria came from Nashville with a suitcase in her hand, says she wants to meet a boy who looks like Elvis.
Oh, wow.
So okay, I took that as a Counting Crows callback.
That probably is straight that. Yeah, all right. That's cool.
But I mean, in High Lonesome, he talks about Southern accents, the 85 Tom Petty song, and then goes right into quoting I'm on Fire from Springsteen. It's just... That's cool. That's the way he's able to weave all that in there. I love it.
Yeah, that's the You Know the Rest line, right?
Yes. It's a
pretty good song, maybe You Know the Rest.
Yeah. Walk through the streets with my feet soaking wet.
Yeah, with the feet soaking wet. Yeah.
It's a good tune, You Know the Rest, something like that.
Yeah, well, that's good to know Counting Crows. Okay. I need to listen to Counting Crows then, is what it is.
Yeah, I think that's off Recovering Satellites. Nice. Great album.
Yeah, I'm so shocked with your 3, but I'm very pleased.
Or you were expecting the first tracks 1, 2, and 3, I assume, which are all great tracks. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that those. I just the takeaway ones that I wanted to put on a separate playlist were those 3.
I love it. Yeah, I think I'm there with you with Here's Looking at You Kid. I also think probably The Backseat and a 59 Sound are probably going to be my choices there. Again, certain phrases, you don't really know why they get stuck in your head, but like this is one of those where like I'll find myself very frequently coming back to the line, and in the back seats, we just try to find some room for our knees. And that's like a very...
That's the note I made, was that line.
Yeah, it's just a good, cramped vibe of a line.
Yeah, it to me, it was the guy that's in the middle. He's not a kid anymore, but he's not adult enough to be in the front seat. He's still stuck in the back seat, but he's running out of room. He's in the middle.
Yeah.
And that's a great way to describe it, the knees comment.
And then he says, in the backseat, we need to find some room to breathe. I just think he's so good at opening songs. Like the instrumentation of this song, it starts off, you said it was after Here's Looking at You Kid in the track list? Yeah. And then so it finishes Here's Looking at You Kid, and it's like, dum da dum da, here's looking at you kid, and then it's quiet, and then all of a sudden it's like, in the backseat so far, and it gets really, really big.
Yeah,
I think that's like one of the coolest ways to get into a song. Like that goes up with me with like Great Expectations and 59 Sound until they open the song. For me, it's such a big lesson in like how to make a song so hype in such a short amount of time. You just pick like a really, really good riff and then like build it up with a bunch of electric guitars and bass and then just like crash in with drums and vocals, and it just sounds so good. He says, in the back seats of burnt out cars, in the disenchantment lane, the ideal angels twist and turn and ask forgiveness for future mistakes. And I think that's just like, it's so vague and so relatable at the same time, where it's like, forgiveness for future mistakes is one of those things that I'd like.
I don't know what he means by burnout cars, though. That one escaped me.
Yeah.
Metaphor.
I was thinking about people doing burnouts in cars because, like, I like come from a desert town where there's like a ton of space. Mm-hmm. So like, there's just a bunch of people doing like car racing and donuts and like that kind of thing just like happens a lot. And I have no idea where this guy's from, but like,
oh, this Jersey. This is all Jersey.
Oh, okay, yeah. So
hence the Bruce Springsteen, slammed in there.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I've just been in a lot of cars as they've been burning out their tires. So.
and I was picturing like a car, burnt to a crisp.
Yeah. It's a lot harder to sit in, but it would feel, the visual also works. Yeah, I also think of like another way to interpret that is like you have a bunch of burnouts in the car, but I think it would be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, thinking back to my childhood where, in the 80s, where you could get into a car where smoking was just common. So if you're 9, 10 years old and you go over to your friend's house and the family drives you somewhere and you're like, well, the car's full of smoke because the dad's smoking in front. It's like, it was kind of weird. My family didn't do that. So it was always kind of odd.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably the more reasonable interpretation of the lyric. Like just a bunch of, because I mean it kind of fits with
that's one of those visual memories I have where I can smell it just sitting here. That memory.
yeah and I think that's a much more reasonable thing to have experienced in this scenario.
You mentioned song intros, and going back to Great Expectations, a song that is about reflections and did I meet my great expectations that I had for myself kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it starts with a skipping record. So right off the bat, you've got an audio metaphor of repeating mistakes. Right off the bat, and I thought that was really, really cool.
That's really cool. Man, I didn't even pick up that was, it's so, man, you're really doing your research here. I always thought that was just two good electric guitars that were just doing that.
Well, they do the needle drop, and then it skips like 3 times, I think. And then I think they play it, and I could be completely wrong because I'm not a musician, but just you got the like you said, the guitar riff, and they play it like 3 times with still that skipping sort of
cool
record still in the background, and then the song takes the left turn of but that intro feels like skipping, repeating something.
That's really cool, man. That's a really good catch, man. I'm quite impressed with that.
I have my moments.
Yeah. That's a really good one. It's so impressive to me when an album and I don't know like if he thought about that being like a metaphor in and of itself, but man, I really hope that he did, because that'd be such a cool thing.
Yeah. I mean, I just may be reading way too much into it. That's also true, but that's the way I heard it.
I would hope.
Not the first time. Again, this is on repeated listens. Once I had really dove into the lyrics, and then you listen to it again and you just catch different new things, which it's cool to have an album where every time you listen to it, you're grabbing onto something new.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What's really interesting for this as a songwriter is like I continue to, as my ear continues to grow and like learn how to like differentiate certain things, like this is the album that I go to when I'm like learning about drum patterns. This is like anytime I like start learning like what another instrument sounds like, I'm like, I always come back to this thing. to try and parse out like all the different parts.
Yeah, there was one Casanova Baby had the nice drum intro on it. My note is living the blue collar life while trying to build a band and be with the girl. I'm the he's the Casanova, but not really. He's faking it.
Yeah. This is another cool background vocals track as well. Oh no, I'm mixing this up. This is the right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. I like this one as like such a break from the other ones. Like this one feels happier to me.
Yeah.
Like just overall the chorus, oh my Virginia, we could run all night. It feels a lot dancier compared to the other ones, which are like kind of heavy subject matters. This is like a lot sweeter, a lot more lighthearted.
Yeah, it's him living his life trying to get the girl.
Yeah.
That's similar to, I think, to the one before, the patient Ferris wheel with this kind of just live in the moment.
Yeah. What other things are you typically listening for when you're listening so intensely to an album? I'm getting a lesson in like how to listen to an album specifically, because I'm listening to it as like I feel like you're really studying these things, but in a very different way.
I do for the show, but this I probably really was the target audience for this album in 2008. I think it came out in 2008. Is that right? Yeah, it's 2008. I'm surprised that I missed it, but that was a bit of a transition year for me from one life to the next, and jobs and stuff like that, traveling a lot. So I kind of missed a whole music scene that year, and it's a shame because this really was an excellent album. It hits me in my sweet spot because his influences are what I regularly listen to. I listen to a ton of Tom Petty. I listen to a lot of Springsteen, Tom Waits, and Otis Redding, Bob Seger, Elvis Costello. I listen to all that. And then I think I mentioned earlier that they reminded me a lot of the Killers. Love the Killers.
Yeah.
And I listened to a lot of them in 05, 06, 07, during their heyday. And yeah, this unfortunately blew right by me. I would have latched onto this pretty quickly had I heard it then.
Yeah.
And really the authenticity of his vocals with the lyrics. I mean, if someone was singing these lyrics without that honesty behind it, it wouldn't work.
Yeah.
Anything more you want to mention on the 59 song?
Oh, yeah. It's funny that there's a song called like that involves like a Ferris wheel. When I listen to this one, I always like see myself like on a roller coaster with my hands up, because there's like this really fun chorus of like, you in your high top sneakers and your sailor tattoo. But in the background, it's like, this one's just like another one of those feel goods. I think this album does a good job of breaking up the like really heavy topics with some feel good songs. And I think this is definitely one of those. Yeah. Do I have other things to say about the album?
One note I have on Old White Lincoln and then into High Lonesome was that tracks 1 through 4 are perpetual motion forward. It doesn't stop. Once you get past the skipping record of those few notes, it goes and goes and goes.
Yeah.
And then when you throw the lyrics in there, it's almost like the way I visualized it is a guy moving forward through life and making choices. And all of these songs are him looking back when he can't stop to see if the choices were correct or not.
Yeah.
And it comes to a stop at film noir. I'm not saying it's a concept album. I'm just saying sonically that's how the music flowed for me, and I like that. And the lyrics matched the pace of the album in that first half really well. With that whole theme of reflection and did I make the right choices?
Yeah. I'm trying to think about closing statements for this record of things that I love about it. I think it does such a good job. Like, it's interesting that you're using the word reflections, because I think about reflections as like introspection, and I do think there's like a ton of introspection here, but I feel a bunch of like, and the reflections is certainly involved in this, but I just feel like a ton of past sadness.
One word I didn't use was regret. So
yeah.
he's reflecting, but he's not saying that I made the bad decision, because as we all know in life, there's really is no right or wrong decision most of the time. It's just a decision. So could things have happened differently? Sure. If Gail could have called, sure, things would have gone differently for him, you know, but things happened and he lived his life the best he could, you know, with the decisions he made.
Yeah. And I think that that's good. I thing that I feel like I really resonate with is this feeling of like looking back, and no, it's not regret, but it is wonder. Again, in the 59 song, he's asking, like, did you hear the rattling chains in the hospital walls? Meaning, like he's looking back at his past, not knowing whether it's, like, good or bad. He's looking at himself now, not knowing if it's good or bad. He doesn't know what the future is going to hold, whether it be, like, eternal damnation or like embrace into the everlasting arms, you know, like that I think is like this very interesting through line of like just looking back and not having an answer to that being very unsettling. And I think that that's like something that makes me feel very seen as I listen to the record. I think that's how a lot of people like look back in retrospect, where it's just like a lot of us say like, oh, I don't regret anything in my past. And I'm like, no, I don't regret my past because it brought me here, and like I wouldn't trade the things that I have here, but I don't know that I did my best, and I don't know that I'm good. And so I live with this ambiguity. It's scary.
And that goes back to, it's very relatable.
Yeah.
Everybody can listen to this and imprint it on their own lives and have the same sort of, you know, reflective nature.
Yes. Also like starting out with great expectations as like the counter to that, of being like, you like start off with life with these great expectations for what you're going to be, and then you are what you are, and then you have to deal with that difference in whatever your expectation was. And I just think this also holds like mourning that pretty well.
I'd like to take a moment and throw a suggestion out to all our listeners. There's a show out there that is a musical face-off like no other. Dive into Song Swap Showdown, your go-to spot for weekly music clashes. Join Chris and Amanda as they exchange tunes, rate them, and dive deep into the world of music. From rock anthems to pop hits, they cover it all. A personal favorite episode of mine is where they each picked their favorite childhood cartoon themes like DuckTales and Transformers and then battled it out. It's great. Whether you're a music aficionado or just want a weekly pick-me-up, Song Swap Showdown is your jam. Join them every Monday at 8:15 a.m. Eastern, live on Facebook, YouTube, or on your favorite podcast platform. So, moving on from 59 Sound, what would be on your short list? So 3 to 5 albums that maybe you could have spoken about, ones that mean a lot to you. We're not going to dive deep into them, just a short list, ones that you may have brought to the table. Okay.
Well, this was also on, I think, one of your like promo things, but the Linkin Park Hybrid Theory is a big one, just based off of when I was young.
Several people have wanted to talk about that one. It's a popular one.
Yeah, it's for a good reason. It's defining of
absolutely.
a generation.
That one came out right at the right time, and I was 20. It was perfect.
Yeah, I mean, I was in like elementary school, and it was still perfect. Like, it's amazing how much angst someone in the suburbs can have at such a young age. Am I thinking The Stranger? Is that what I'm thinking?
Billy Joel,
The Stranger.
Ah, it's my favorite Billy Joel album.
Yeah, the scenes from an Italian restaurant continues to be like something that I continue to go back to all the time. There's a Randy Newman album called Dark Matter that I continue to come back to. He put that out in like 2016, and it has some of the most heartbreaking songs. If you're into Here's Looking at You Kid, then I would go to Randy Newman,
like like Short People, Randy Newman?
Yeah.
You're the first person to bring up Randy Newman on this podcast. So
yeah, his album Dark Matter has 2 songs. One is called She Chose Me, and another one called Wandering Boy. And those are just brutal listens, but like so beautiful. And
interesting. All I know of Randy Newman are the songs from movies.
Yeah.
Like the beginning of Major League is the first thing that pops into my head when you mention Randy Newman.
Yeah, none of these songs got put into any movies. Which is a bummer, because these are really, really good. I mean, it's no Short People, I'll tell you that. There's nothing there. And then there's probably like some pop punk emo kind of stuff, like A Day to Remember's.
Okay.
Maybe like For Those Who Have Heart or something, which is one of their early albums. That's like something for me to run to.
It's a hard question, and I love the answer. It's always great when I get some interesting answers on that one.
Yeah, because there's like so many songs that people like, but when it comes to like album, like what are the things that you put on? Oh, the Over the Garden Wall soundtrack. That's like, it's a Cartoon Network show. That's like one of my biggest inspirations.
What kind of music's on that?
It really ranges, because it's like a soundtrack to the show. It was made by Cartoon Network in like 2000, I don't know, we'll call it the 2010s. And it's a 10 episode Cartoon Network series. Each episode is 8 minutes. It feels very like Brothers Grimm kind of stories, but none of these stories you would have heard. They just feel familiar because they use a lot of Americana. And so there's like ragtime kind of stuff.
Okay.
How the gentle wind beckons through the leaves as autumn colors fall.
They get like Jack Jones and Tom Waits to be on it.
Oh, no kidding.
Elijah Wood is the like lead voice.
I know nothing of this cartoon. I might have to go watch this.
So like my music teacher is the composer for that soundtrack.
Oh, cool.
And so when I moved to Los Angeles, I was like, well, I've been in love with this for like 8 years now. How about I like try and reach out to this person, see if this person's willing to teach me? And he was like, yeah, I live 15 minutes from you. And so I was like, crazy.
That's awesome.
So I've been able to like study with that guy, and he's actually featured on the record that I'm putting out in October.
Well, I mean, let's just lead right into that. I mean, tell our listeners what you do, what you got out there, and what's next for you.
Yeah. Gosh, I can't believe I didn't say any Bon Iver records, or any The National records, or any Hozier records. I'm the worst. Or any Shaky Graves records.
The National just released 2 singles today, actually.
Oh, really? Nice.
Out of nowhere, yeah.
They just released an album, too, so...
Hey, don't quote me on it, but they might not be on the album.
Oh, really?
Or maybe they are and just, I don't know. Don't quote me on that, but
gotcha.
My friends sent it to me. Space Invader and Alphabet City, both released today.
Nice. Yeah, so Hozier's debut EP, Bahamas, his Brown album, Earth Tones. These are all in there as well. Now that you've asked me about my music, I'm like, oh yeah, I listen to these people all the time. Okay, yeah, I'm an artist and I make music. And now I'm transitioning from thinking of all these other artists toward my own music. I'm in the process of finishing my first full-length record. We just raised $15,000 in about 2 months to make this, and it's going well. The first single comes out an hour and a half from now. So by the time this is coming out, absolutely it's out. First song is called Drugs. The second single is called Rocket, and the whole album is called Lake, and it's a 10-song album about, very similarly to the 59 Sound, about death and reflection. And we experienced the death of a family member in this last year, and this was also the year that I had intended, kind of separately, that this was going to be the year that I make a full-length record. And so it just turned out that like a lot of the processing of that grief showed up in this album, and that was not what I had intended. It's not when you make a record, you don't hope that it's sad at all. That's not the goal, to be like, oh yeah. But the reason why I pull on the 15 sound so constantly is because it's this reminder. I mean, and for that reason, like on that same note, like Hybrid Theory and like a lot of these big records, the reason why they're connecting with you is because they're dealing with really hard concepts. You're actually watching someone struggle through something, but the music is so good that it's easy to pick up. Like it's approachable because of the good music. And if you want to engage with what's actually being said, there's like a lot of depth to be plumbing there. And it's really good for me to know that some of my favorite records are actually grappling with hard things. And that's kind of what this last year has been looking like.
So all tracks written by you?
All tracks written by me. These were written basically November through March of like 2022 through 2023. One of the songs is called Loretta, and it's that whole chord structure for that song was written by the same guy who did Over the Garden Wall.
Okay.
And he's playing piano on like a lot of the songs as well. And so it's his brother who's also in that same band. He's like playing a lot of the horns. And so, yeah, it's been cool to go from like a fanboy to like hiring the people who have been inspiring me for years. And yeah, now I'm just nudging little files in my bedroom all day, just like, and like, all right.
Are you releasing that on like Bandcamp?
Spotify and everything. It'll be on Bandcamp as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll be linking the Bandcamp stuff to you in the show notes. I know Bandcamp gives the best kickback to the artist.
It's true. Yeah, and they have Bandcamp Fridays where they give 100% to the artist, which is crazy.
Yeah, so use Bandcamp when you check out Conner's music.
Absolutely. Yeah, so that's that record.
That's awesome. I'm looking forward to that album. I want to dive into that one when it comes out.
Yeah, now that I know that people are looking toward albums with fine-tooth combs like you, I'm going to be a lot more careful about where I put my songs in the track list.
I had a previous guest that he likes to rearrange tracks in his head. It's an exercise he does where he, if I were to produce this album, where would I put these tracks? And it was something I had never thought of before. It's a neat exercise because me and my friends were music geeks, and we like to talk about best album opener, best album closer, best track 5, that sort of thing. So the flow of an album and where songs lie is something that is going through my head when I listen to an album. Why is this album here? Because that was intentional. It's not like the old days of, a Kiss album where, well, we need a filler, just throw something in there so that we can not have to have dead air on the 8-track.
Right.
Those days are gone. It's intentional.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fascinating. Like as I began to like workshop this album and like show off all of these songs to people and being like, what do you think? What should change? Should I cut any of these? And even things like the song titles, like I had a buddy look at the song titles. He was like, 7 of these are 1-word titles. You should make them all 1-word titles. He's like, I don't think the like multiple word titles make it look more intentional. And he was like, I think it'd be really cool if these were all like really short. And he was like, I think they could all work. And I was like, actually, when I do reduce these word counts, they're kind of better titles. So
that's a good point. Yeah.
The intentionality there, I do think, especially with AI being this like really big buzzword that everyone's thinking about, everybody's worried that like someone is going to be phoning it in. Like maybe my album art was done by AI, or maybe like the drums were done by AI. And I just want there to be like intentionality in every single place. And I want there to be like caring human labor in all the places. Cause like that's really, with all of this art, we're really hoping to like connect with people and like see people. So yeah, like involving like even the album art, got like my buddy that I play pickleball with, who's like a fine artist, like got him to like do a like legit acrylic painting.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, which I'm going to be able to like photograph. So I'm going to be like, yeah, so there gets to be so much more intentionality this time around. And I just feel really grateful for that. And it makes me respect other people's intentionality so much more, where I'm like, man, I like the track skipping thing at the beginning of Great Expectations. I'm like, that's the level of intentionality you would want out of an album.
So number one, I'm a big Pink Floyd fan, so I've been diving into albums of that level of intentionality.
Nice.
Dark Side and the Wall and Animals, since high school. But one album of recent that we did on the show, Quadrophenia, kind of blew my mind.
Quadrophenia.
Yeah, The Who.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it was a mega episode. Me and my friend Luke, we talked about it for over 2 hours because it's a double album,
Cool.
concept album. And it was one that, still the best album closer, I'm going to say right now, Love Reign Over Me. It's perfect. And if you get a chance to dive into Quadrophenia, it'll probably change your life a little bit. And then you're going to listen to my episode after you do that.
Absolutely.
We break it down. Because there's a lot in there. But it's not just telling the concept story. It's literally a story about a dude with 4 personalities in his head. And there's leitmotifs throughout the entire thing that Pete Townsend puts in there. And you hear them in different ears,
Whoa.
during, these, it's just amazing. It's really amazing. And it's so intelligent. I love it.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of album that I could probably listen to right now and then do another 2 hours with Luke diving back into it.
Wow.
So I highly recommend that one, as far as it's ones like that are making me more aware to the little things again on these albums.
That's really neat. That's so cool. When you think about the number of people who have probably listened to that album and the number of people who are picking up on that, like, it's probably relatively few, like, who are picking up on all those little motifs. And I think that's such a cool way to have a relationship with an artist, of being like, you know what, everybody might pick up on like XYZ, but like when you were making this like super minute thing and you're like, you know what, probably no one's going to care. And then you did it anyway. You did it literally for like me and like a couple other 100 people, and that was it. Like, which is really cool. Like you are that person that they actually wrote that line for.
Well, I would say Luke is the one they wrote the line for. I'll give him the credit. I love a good, just all-out rocket album like Van Halen 1. 8 tracks made in 1978 is just boom, 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 boom. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Yeah.
Rock on. I mean, those albums are great too, but I do love a good intellectual album that you can listen to repeatedly and you find new things almost every time.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great.
Well, Conner, I'd like to thank you for your time today. It was a pleasure to sit and talk with you about the 59 Sound by the Gaslight Anthem.
Yeah, this was a pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
Find Conner on Instagram, I know. Are you on Twitter or anything else? Or
Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube,
all right.
and LinkedIn.
What's your Instagram handle on there?
Conner Cherland. ConnerCherland.
Give him a follow on there after you follow Music Rewind. And thank you for listening to Music Rewind, a podcast from the Sidereal Media Group. As I always say, listen to the full album. Until next time. I'd like to thank you for listening to Music Rewind, a podcast from the Sidereal Media Group. If you enjoyed today's episode, there are many ways to help the show, such as our Patreon or affiliate links in the show notes. The easiest way, though, is to give the show a rating or comment wherever you listen. We really do appreciate it. Thank you again, and as I always say, listen to the full album. Until next time.
A podcast from the Sidereal Media Group. Back to you, anchors.